Maisha, how did you advocate for yourself to combat the double standards within your industry?
Let's see. So for me, combating them was just kind of making myself, having networks, making sure that I was in the room and making sure that I had a seat at the table. Very times at politics, we walk into rooms, it's always white men who are at the table. So when you see a younger African-American female walk in a room, especially with locks, when I first started, I had a big curly afro. They kind of just step back and looking like, who is this female? Who is she? So it's kind of just sitting at the table and making sure that my presence was known and that I knew the information. I was there to help and be of service. So just kind of making sure that I had a seat at the table and my voice was being heard.
Now, you raised an interesting point about making sure that you were known and what you know. And Jeana, I'd be really interested to hear your perspective on how you've had to credentialize yourself in a room as part of the double standard.
Right. Well, oftentimes I'll walk into a room and it'll be a gentleman that works for me that is addressed before me, because it's naturally they assume that I report to him and not he to me. And that has happened, frequently throughout my career. And I often, and I have to say I was, definitely our fathers help, develop us and teach us their ways if they're professionals and how they led their career. So I was always told, get your credentials. Right. So that was important, but I didn't realize how much more a woman needed those credentials to validate their knowledge, because sometimes even, today you'll feel like I can say the same thing as a man, but if the man says it after me, it gives me more credibility for some reason, even though I might have more knowledge and expertise and more education behind it. So, I think it is always important, I'll never diminish having the credentials, but I don't think that a woman necessarily has to have more credentials or more degrees than a man. I think we just need to assert for ourselves more, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's something called a double bind, which is often a catch-22 for many of us, where leaders are looked to be authoritative, to show up in a room and have a strong presence. At the same time, women sometimes need to be viewed as likable. And so, Geri, I'd be really interested to hear about how you've been able to represent your leader and marry those two.
So a lot of times if you're not smiling or you're just thinking or whatever, they tend to say you're moody, you're, not having a good day. But, a man is, discerning, he's thinking, he's, for women, it's much harder. So a lot of times, like I've learned to be slow down, because I can be very, very fast. And that comes off as abrasive, but not for a man. So I have to slow down sometimes, whether I'm on the phone or I'm talking face to someone. I have to say, slow down, smile every now and then, so they don't think, what the heck? It's difficult. And a lot of times, wherever I am, even if I'm talking, they talk over me. And I have a loud voice. Sometimes I don't need a mic, and I will not let them do that. I'll go, wait a minute. But that's the only way sometimes, because they will look, like she said, to a male first. I go on funerals and, I'm the one with all the checks, and they still go to the limo driver. And I'm like, I'll just wait patiently till they figure out who the funeral director is here, But that's the way it is.
Yeah. Maisha, would you have a perspective on this as well?
Absolutely. I agree with both of them right here. When I go into a room, especially being in this position, the first thing that if I have a male with me, and usually he's reporting to me, they will talk to the man first. And they'll look, and like you said, I will patiently wait for them for a question to be asked where it has to be directed back to me. So I don't try to assert myself in the room. And more or less, I just wait until I'm asked, but still let it be known that when I'm asked, or when a question is posed, that they directly have to come back to me, that I'm just making sure I give the full information so they realize that, okay, she's actually the person who we need to talk to. And this is the conversation that needs to be had between this person. But you kind of just have to just stay the course. There's always going to be men who see you in that light. But as long as you know your purpose and your value of being in the room and why you're there, you're really going to be fine.
That's great. I think purpose and intent, I was really inspired this morning, and also about mentorship, which we heard a lot during the TED style talks earlier. So Jeana, as a leader, how have you mentored others, men or women, to combat the double standard and encourage that behavior within the team?
Yeah, I think I try to help people find their voice and speak up for themselves, right? And I think that is for both men and women. And I think women are naturally, where they might feel marginalized by a comment that someone else, perhaps a man that made to them. They don't try. They let others own their narrative instead of owning it for themselves. Don't let anyone speak on your behalf, and be a good advocate when you feel like you're not being heard. I think with men, it's just being considerate of others. And a lot of times it's, we all have these generalizations that we pass on one another. Women are multitaskers, men are not. I mean, how many times do you hear that? And that's not necessarily true. I'm sure there are plenty of men that are excellent multitaskers, but I think we have these generalizations and we pass them along. And it's just to take a moment to stop and think, what are the best qualities of the individual, or what's something that, whether it's a male or female, that they can work on to enhance. And that's what I try to do. I find that, even within my own team, to look at the qualities. I always say, like, there are certain individuals that are great relationship builders, and I want that influence with others that are not great relationship builders. They tend to put their heads down and just get the work done. So it's kind of like coaching more than it is managing. You look, when you're coaching a team, you're looking for, the skills and the capabilities of each player, and you want to place them in the right position so that they can excel. It's the same thing when you're managing a team. You look for those qualities and you hope that it makes it easier for you as a leader, so that you're putting those people together so that they can help balance each other out and learn from each other's attributes.
Oh, excellent. And how are you a coach, Geri, with your team?
So I work with my husband, and I have 3 funeral directors that are women with me and 1 male. So that's the makeup of our business. So I encourage the girls and put them in awkward positions sometimes. And I say, if it helps, when you're on the phone, just pretend you're me, because you hear me over and over. And if it makes you more comfortable to speak so that you can do it, then do it. And they become very good at it. And at the end, because we're like this. We're this close in a small office. And I'll just say, it's the way you say it. And I'll just say it this way so it's less of a choice, so they understand what you want. And you're not asking for permission. You're asking but telling in the same form. So I encourage them that way, and I help them that way. And let me tell you, they call them all mini-me's now. But I also, because my husband works with me, we're all funeral directors. We're all equally, the women are probably more credentialed, like she said, because it's harder to be taken serious unless you are. So we have more education than most of the men in the room. And I have to remind him all the time. He'll come in and be like, can you take the garbage out? Can you clean the bathroom? They're no different than you, and they're working. If you notice it, do it. Don't come in and tell me the garbage is full. You saw it, you do it. You clean just like the rest of us. Just because we're females doesn't mean it's our job. And we clean before and after every funeral. So this is like, irks me. The garbage is as big as my tiny little Jordana. It's probably 5 feet, and it's halfway up her body. And you got to go across the parking lot to the garbage. And I look at him and I go, just keep going, move, you could take it. So that's, I mean, I have to combat it every day because of that. I really do. Yeah. I just remind them. I remind them all.
Maisha, what advice would you give to someone looking to break into your industry and how to form their identity within it?
So the advice I would give is start at an internship level. Breaking into politics, sometimes it's hard to get your foot in the door into an office setting with an elected official. But if you start at the internship level, they'll see your hustle and your grind and wanting to be a part of the organization. They'll see your work ethic, your determination, and how you want to continue to move. Because that's essentially how I started in politics, through an internship. And you just kind of morph into what draws your attention. And there are a lot of different ways to go into politics, whether you want to stay with an elected official or you want to move on to an authority like CRDA or whatever department within the state of New Jersey or whatever draws you to it. But definitely an internship will allow you to see what the days are like in the industry. And so I would definitely say start at that level, or even if you want to go right into an office, just spend your time volunteering, because that's really going to let you know whether or not you want to do the long days and the long hours and the people. You don't realize how many people you have to interact with, whether it's the elected officials or whether it's constituents or it's other departments within the state. So really just kind of volunteering and spending your time in the industry and learning what it's about before you get in, just to go that route.
Great. And Jeana, when you look back, earlier in career and all the knowledge that you've gained and a lot of the advice, we've been hearing from this panel today, what do you wish you knew then that you know now to help kind of navigate the double standard?
I don't know how everyone in this room is, but I can't tell you. My quick response and my quick wit didn't develop young. So I would often walk out of a room where I had a situation where I wish I said, I wish I came back at them. I wish I spoke up for myself. Why did I do that? Why did I let that sit there and not combat that? Or, I'd always have a great quick response, after the fact. And, but I was always, I let it fluster me. And now I say, well, why did I let someone make me feel so uncomfortable and fluster me like that? Now I just, when I feel that, I quickly respond. And I wish that I could have told myself that it's okay. They're making you feel uncomfortable. You do the same thing, make them feel uncomfortable, because that's the only thing that, all the work that all the women in this room have been doing, and these lovely women on the panel, the reason why we're able to continue to work and thrive in a male-dominated fields is because we were tenacious and we kept after it, and we spoke up eventually for ourselves. So I would definitely tell younger women and my younger self that it's okay, make someone else feel uncomfortable, because it's the only way it's going to change anything is if someone else feels a little uncomfortable, because it causes them to think.
Yeah, it's a common theme we've been hearing today in terms of growing your confidence muscle. What Maisha said about experience and starting and learning and becoming an expert in what you do, and Geri in terms of barreling through the door and making them see her. And so Geri, also, what would advice you would give yourself as, the 25-year-old funeral director for the first time?
Wow. I thought about that when I saw the question, and I was like, what advice would I give myself? It's okay to be assertive, because you're not taken serious if you're not. And you only get to do someone's funeral for their loved one once, and you don't want to make a mistake or for them to say, why did I go there? I'm going to go to another funeral home. So I have to constantly stand out. So what I did and what I would give myself advice would be, and when we join clubs like Rotary and things like that, the first thing they would always ask you to do, be treasurer or secretary. Okay. But then they leave you there. They don't move you up. Say, no, I'm moving up the chairs. because you learn to be a leader and to delegate when you're president and vice president and you run those meetings and stuff like that. And then you sit on different boards. Once you get to there, people ask you to sit on different boards, and then you get to be more assertive again. So I would say take that step, young Geri. Do it sooner than later. You're always afraid to move up. Move up. Do it. Don't let them leave you in that position. Like, oh, you're doing a great job. You know, we're going to let somebody, don't do that. Yeah. Really important.
I like this question, so I want to hear, Maisha, your perspective as well.
Absolutely. I think what I would tell myself is what actually someone told me when I was first coming into the political arena is that the phone calls you have to make, the person on the other end of the phone, especially when you're speaking to other elected officials, because if you notice in politics, one thing people like to do is flex their title and say, well, do you know who I am? And you have to remember at the end of the day, they put their pants on the same way you do. And that was probably the biggest impact I remember, that when I have to make the phone calls or sit at these meetings, that this person is no different than me. They're putting on their pants the same way I do, one leg at a time. So just keep that in the back of my mind and don't ever back down.
Absolutely.
I like to see them wear a dress.
Yeah, dress and heels.
How about heels?
Don't forget the heels.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're one up on them.
Yeah.
Or to be told you look tired, you know.
Yeah.
Well, on a positive note, you know, I think a lot of us, you know, have seen the industry change over time. The room has changed over time, and this room is really a sight to behold. And so, you know, Jeana, how have you seen the workforce change, you know, especially within banking from where you started there, and how the double standards being combated?
Yeah, you know, and in banking, for instance, I was often the only woman in a sea of men, and I grew accustomed to that. Now that is dramatically different. And coming from, I had always worked for a large financial institution. So now coming into a growing community, now commercial bank, which was probably more male dominated in that segment of the banking industry, more so than any other type of financial institution. And we're dominated by female employees, female executives, you know, wonderful team members here that are all leaders, and, you know, great, you know, female leaders at the bank. And I love seeing that. And more of people like myself, typically my role is male dominated, and there are more and more women getting into treasury and leading organizations and getting into technology, which has been wonderful to see. And you know, I think now we just need to keep those younger generations, that just younger females that want to join the banking industry overall. So we're working, like you said, with interns and trying to cultivate that, because young people are not necessarily going into banking, but trying to continue that appeal and bring more women to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that at my organization as well, we work very closely with local high schools, encouraging STEM within the field. And I know just right before this panel, Maisha, we're talking about all the great work you guys do within the Atlantic City region. Mm-hmm. And so would just love to hear about how you connect with the youth and bring them into, you know, this industry and continue to diversify it.
Absolutely. So being with the CRDA, one of the major things that we try to do is keep our dollars here in Atlantic City, which is very important. A lot of the youth here are underserved, so we make sure that we are providing them with the financial opportunities. And usually with those financial opportunities, it's other organizations here in Atlantic City, Boys and Girls Club for one. We have Leaders in Training to America, local hospital, Atlantic Care, Stockton University. Those are our partners where we're helping to fund different programs here in Atlantic City for youth programs that they may never ever have experience or have opportunity to do. So we want to continue to fund those programs so they have the opportunities that people in the suburbs around would have. So we want to make sure that we are funding them and giving them the tools and opportunities that their counterpartners have that they wouldn't necessarily have.
Oh, absolutely. I think as the rooms change, the double standard continues to get, you know, combated and continues to improve. And I know earlier, Geri, you talked about how just the makeup of your office alone, and how does that change the way that the dynamic is today versus, you know, earlier on?
So I remember when there was like, if you were lucky, there was a female in the office. It was all men. After all, the men are doing the lifting, the men are doing the embalming, the men are doing this. Well, guess what? Our license, in order to get licensed, you have to do it all. So yeah, when I started, I was very difficult. I got into it, but I worked by myself and did all the embalming, the hair, everything that had to be done from start to finish on every funeral until I could grow the business. Now, I got 3 girls and 2 men. The girls, and finding a man is getting more and more difficult, but doesn't stop us. So girls may not be pound for pound as strong as a man, but that doesn't mean I can't send 2 women out on a transfer. I do what I have to. And, sometimes the girls go out there and it's disappointing because the cops look and they go, "That's what you're sending?" And I send 2 girls and I go, "Well, show them they're wrong. Don't let them discourage you. Show them you're wrong. That's all. We can do it." And we do. And sometimes they're gentlemen and they help. And sometimes they just sit and watch, But, it's getting better as opposed to when I first got in it. And it was just like, I would go on transfers and they would send a man with me and it would be okay until it would be like, stop the elevator for no reason. You'd be like, "What's going on?" They treated you like a sex object. You have to be treated for the education you have, the license you have, what you're here for. So, that has changed a lot, thank God. I don't have to worry about being with a man anymore and being like, "Am I okay? Do I have to watch where I stand? You dress nice, you're provocative. A man dresses nice, he's a businessman." There's a lot of things out there you have to combat. And it irks you that you have to bring daughters up into this world and show them they need to be treated on an equal level. I have 2 daughters and they look to me, they make fun of me sometimes, don't all daughters, but they're all professionals. They all have licenses in different fields, but they know how to be treated. And they will tell you it's because you showed us. You showed us the way. You didn't let anyone take advantage of you. So we know not to let anyone take advantage of us, but that is still out there.
I think that's absolutely a positive trend in the workforce, that people see women leaders in their home and their communities and their mentorship. And so what have you seen in terms of the changing of the workforce, Maisha?
So for me, I definitely see more women stepping up. And it's refreshing to see that when I go and sit down with different organizations and different executives, it's not just men, it's women who are coming in the room. And that's definitely refreshing for me because we're having the conversations that, sometimes men are apprehensive in this world that they may not want to have female. They do eventually, but just having the open dialogue with different business women who are in this industry is refreshing. So I'm seeing a lot more women step up and come in at an earlier age as well too. So I think that's important. The earlier that you can grab a young woman into this world, the better.
Absolutely. And Jeana, what are you seeing different in this, more recent college hires or interns that are coming in? How have the attitudes changed and the dynamics changed for them and how they've grown up because they've had this generation that's preceded them?
Yeah, and it's funny, we have this dinner time conversation all the time. Oh, they're lazy, this generation of work in the workforce or joining the workforce. And they're really, I think most of them, or a good portion of them that are pursuing college degrees have seen their parents make a lot of sacrifices, right? And maybe not be at every sporting event or because they're traveling for work and trying to, put food on the table. And, I think that they're much more conscious of work-life balance, which I can appreciate, but they're also very efficient workers. And I think, you do see some tendencies. I know my team will tell you from our interns, we have male and female summer interns, and they're all, it's the first day, very shy, introverted. They don't, they're uneasy. And then a week or 2 in, and they let that guard down. But I think, we've had first generation college students as our female college students as our summer interns, and to see their personality really, shine through by the end of the summer, where they have more confidence and they find their voice. And again, they're not necessarily around people with professional degrees, or their parents or come from different fields, and they're getting this exposure. And it's I think that I have a lot of hope for the new generation. I think they're going to teach us a lot of things that we should have learned a long time ago. That, at the end of the day, what do you want on, I'm sure Jerry hears this all the time, but what do you want on your tombstone, right? And do you want to be, it's Jeana Piscatelli, she was a fine banker. No, I want it to be that, I was a good mother, and and a loving wife, and a good friend. That you have to look at what's most important. So I think you have to, I think we're learning a lot from this new generation coming in the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've touched on a lot of really interesting themes, and one is just the dynamics, and it's great that we're all in person this year. I know we were virtual last year, and how the double standard has evolved as more of us had to work from home and share in different responsibilities before, and then also then falls within the workplace. So I know, Jerry, you mentioned you had to, with your field, you we're in the office every day. So I'm curious about how you saw that in terms of, interacting with, the customers and your general field, and how that's evolved.
Are you talking about like during the pandemic?
Yeah, just the change of the dynamics, at the double standards, people were sharing responsibilities that perhaps they weren't before. That also changed, with work. I have a meeting, you have a meeting. How are we going to tag team and take care of whatever is in your household?
Mm-hmm. Well, my business is 24/7, so that's a big thing right there. And I live there, literally upstairs. Guess who always has to answer the phone? When nobody else is there, it's me and him. He just looks at me. You're going to get that? So how has that changed? I look at him and I go, you got that? But it's difficult, because if the employees are gone for the day, they leave, we're all on staggered shifts. My husband and I are still 24/7, because that phone rings at the house all the time. For both businesses, they ring at my house. So if we have meetings or we have to meet with family or whatever, we really have to try and work together. And that's working out, of course, now better and over time. Children are grown now. I'm not trying to balance both. And but I would say I have a good spouse. He's there, he's supportive. I don't want to be like man bashing or anything. He is a good spouse. We do work together well. We kind of sometimes the roles are defined too much, but it does work together. So getting to people and the clients and whatever, we just have to set a schedule. We really do. Who's doing pre-need, who's doing at need? Are we moving the schedule because funerals happen? So like you might have a meeting and then all of a sudden somebody dies, the at need has to come first. So the at need is getting moved priority and the pre-need is getting moved over. But you don't want to forget about the pre-need. So sometimes we have to like, all right, you got this, I got that, or no, we have to reschedule. Jerry, you're the only one who could do this, because I'm the only licensed insurance agent in there. So if you're a pre-need and you're prepaying, that's me. But if he's picking up and doing a transfer for us, I got to do the at need too. So we just got to cohesively work together and discuss it all the time and make it work. So we have to forget the genders and put the people in the right place at the right time. Like you have to do this, you have to do that. How are we balancing this out? And how are we talking to, we call our clients families. Who's talking to the family and how are we going to get through it? Because you have a time limit with a funeral. You can't say, oh, we'll see them next month. You can't do that. So it's like, are we shifting it an hour? Are we shifting it? And how are we both accomplishing this, right? It's just the way it is. We got to work together.
Yeah. It's a few times today we talked about the individual and playing to the strengths of the individual and encouraging the individual. And I think the rise of the individual is perhaps one of the interesting outcomes of the pandemic as well. So Maisha, just wanted to hear your perspective on that as well.
Absolutely. So for me, It's definitely having the support there. I have to agree with Jerry too. My husband is very supportive and all. I've been with my husband since we were high school sweethearts. So he has always known my goals and what I want to do. So starting a family was definitely, I like to plan things, but you can't plan a family. It's going to come in due time. And so my family came in due time. And so having him as a partner who's a full hands-on, I have young girls, they're 9 and 2 years old. He's hands-on 100%. I live by calendars. By default, he has no choice but to live by my calendar. So aside from my 9 to 5, which probably goes later than that, I also am the PCO president at my daughter's school. My daughter does cheerleading. She does gymnastics. My younger one, thank God she's not there yet, but I know she will be soon. So it's just a matter of, hey, I have to pick up this one, so I need you to pick up that one. There are no gender roles in my house because he picks up what I cannot do. He knows for my job that I have to do some late nights and I have to do some early mornings. So he is there and willing to help me. It's interesting. I think one of the questions we discussed, does your husband hear, do you have to get home for the kids? Sometimes he does because he works in construction. So he lets his boss know, like, hey, my wife has to do X, Y, and Z. She's the breadwinner. So I need to step off the job a little bit earlier. And thankfully, he's there to pick up the pieces for me when I'm unable to do it or handle what's going on. So I think just for me, the communication is definitely key. I've had to put not just calendar on our phones because he refuses to use his calendar on his phone. So I put calendars in our room about different things that I'm doing. I have to write on the calendar. He's like, you didn't tell me. It's like, it's on the calendar. Like it exists. It may not be that I was going to go, but calendars definitely do rule my life. And so I just make sure that in my work life, he's there to support me. And I'm thankful he's there because sometimes I have to bounce ideas off of him because I don't understand the male brain, just like he doesn't understand the female brain. So when I'm talking to him, he helps me to understand that, hey, maybe it wasn't meant in this way towards you, but this is the perspective he was trying to get. And so when I go back to that meeting, I'm able to understand a little bit more from that perspective of what the man was saying. So my husband is definitely a great support system and I couldn't do it without him. So
I think, it takes a village, and
Yes.
however that village is constructed is helped us all through the past few years. So, I know we're coming probably close to Q&A, but so I want to ask, in terms of the double standard, and I know we touched upon what's changed and the younger generation and some of what you've taught yourself, and also just how are we more vocal about it before? How have you given a voice to it in a way that maybe in the past it's been hidden? So Jeana, I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think what Maisha just mentioned, you think about it through your children, and your children absolutely hear you. And, I have a very supportive spouse. I don't think any one of us could be here if we didn't. But it's also through the eyes of your children. And I have a daughter, and she's very quick to say, oh, that kind of sounded a little sexist to her father. And it's funny because he stops in his tracks, and it wasn't his intention, and he might have been making a joke. But he's like, wow, I didn't even think about it that way. But now she's 13, so she's not too, so she's a very opinionated, but it's not like, she's very conscious of how people treat her, and that she's has the same access to everything as all of her male counterparts. So I think that that's important, and you see it in your children and how it's influencing. But she's also very conscious of, how it takes two. There's a partnership in our marriage, and I always say maybe mommy cooks more than dad. But he does, maybe he cuts the lawn more. I never cut the lawn, to be honest. But we just want everything to be edible, so mommy cooks. And so, it's like we play to our strengths. They might be technically more of a female role than more of a male role for some of the things. But that doesn't mean, my husband can also be the one and was the one doing bedtime stories and snuggles and bath time and you just you take on you try to shed all of those things. But I think certainly you become very conscious of the influence that you're having when you're raising children, and I try to be conscious of both because I do have a son and a daughter, And I want my son and my daughter to be treated equally. And hopefully they feel that in their own household.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw Kate was the Q&A side, so excellent. I know there's a microphone that they have passed around or in the middle of the room. If anyone wants to go up, we'd be really interested. Oh, yeah, for sure.
He's coming to you.
So I'm Rosanda Torres, by the way. Thank you for this very informative, enlightening presentation. When I was a young attorney, my first job was in rural Western Maryland, and I would go in the courthouse with a briefcase and my little uniform suit on, and nobody knew I was a lawyer, and everybody thought I wasn't a lawyer. And I was like, "What's wrong with me? I have the uniform on, and I have the briefcase." I still get that. And I also get, "Wow, you're really short." I'm like, I want to kick you right in the shin. I am very short. But I had to ask you about, not to make a joke of it, but I do family law, and one of my passion projects is representing victims of domestic violence. And so I have a very sensitive spot for injustice. And so I wonder, do you recommend calling out misogyny when you see it? Because it does happen in my line of work a lot with, I hate to say it, older white men typically are the culprits. And sometimes my hair gets up on the back of my neck and I say things and maybe too pointed about it. But what has your experience been? And do you recommend calling that sort of behavior out in the moment?
Absolutely. I have had opportunities, sadly, to do that, where I was, pregnant, or actually I was just returning from having my second child, and my new male boss said to me, "Maybe you don't want to, I didn't think that you wanted to continue to travel the same way you did." And I said, "Well, why did you think that?" And you can't ask me that. Right. And then, and I would continue and I brought in HR into that conversation. And I think that his intention wasn't necessarily criminal, but he needed to understand that wasn't an appropriate question to ask me, and that his assumption should be I'm back and that my role should just continue as it did before. And it was an education. And I think that that's really what it's about. It's speaking up there's not always a maliciousness or a criminal behavior behind it. But if we don't speak up and educate someone to say, that's really not appropriate for you to say. If I was, took paternity leave as a man and I came back, why would you think that my role would change? So I think that was my approach, and I'm always, I am much quicker to think on my feet and not get flustered as I did in my youth, and to say something, would you say that to my male counterpart? Right. And then, it might make them feel a little uncomfortable, but it gives them pause to say, you know what, I probably wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I think you can move forward, and people should just be considering that before they speak, if we have the moment to think before we speak.
I agree with her. Otherwise, it'll just escalate.
Yeah.
I mean, if he does it, they could be, like you said, very innocent.
Mm-hmm.
But if you point it out, then they think about it, and it won't go to another level where it does end up in a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to call them out on it. My daughter sure would.
But do you get that the way you express yourself has to be different than the way they express themselves?
Yeah, you have to be more careful with our
You're
language.
being accused of being, you're not calm. People tell me that all the time.
Yes.
Calm down.
Calm down. We're always
You tell
emotional.
me that if I was a man.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's true. It happens all the time. Yeah, we're emotional. We're aggressive. I ask for money, I'm aggressive. My husband asks for money from a family, and it's, good businessman. I get, she's not compassionate enough in her job. She's asking for the funeral money. We get paid by the day of. You can't undo the funeral, can't unring the bell. We get paid, period. I ask, I'm uncompassionate, I'm too businesslike, I'm this, I'm that. My husband asks for money, they write the check, they give the credit card, they don't think twice. That's the way it is.
Mhm.
So you do. I have to be careful of my wording because I am accused often. Yep.
Yeah, and I think for me, in my line, what I just do if I am approached or something said to me that I kind of wait till after me. Sometimes I'll call out in front. It just depends on who's in the room. You have to read the room as well too.
Mhm.
So sometimes I may take a step back and just take note in my mind or just jot it down. And after the meeting, I'll just pull that individual to the side and say, the comment that you made was truly inappropriate, and I'll just again pull it to the side. You have to read the room to see who you're around sometimes.
Thank you.
Plus, if you take them aside, like she says, they don't feel like they have to defend themselves in front of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can take a moment to calmly reflect what you're saying, right? We don't want to put them on the spot where they feel,
Unless they did it first.
yeah, we're better.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you. I kind of feel like sharing. I'm sorry, this is not a direct question, but and you will be able to appreciate this. Any other attorney in the room will be able to appreciate this. Before I started my own practice, I worked for Liberty Mutual doing insurance defense, and I did this primarily in the southern region of New Jersey. And I literally was called a unicorn because I was young, Black, and female doing insurance defense. Auto accidents, things like that, right? And I'm a trial attorney. I won a trial, one of my first trials in Camden County. And the judge, right, because I was up against a well-known attorney, a plaintiff's attorney, right, neck and back attorney, and I won. And the judge said, and I had a good relationship with the judge too, still do to this day. And he said, nice trick, Miss Queen Stewart. And I'm like, trick? Right? Because he wouldn't have said nice trick if my counterpart had won the case, right? This is a jury trial. They rendered their decision and he said nice trick. That was one incident. I had another incident in Gloucester County, and the judge made a point to say in front of myself and I don't think I need to say that the other attorney was white male, made a point to say to him, it never ceases to amaze me how jurors can get it wrong, he said in front of myself and the other attorney. Okay, now when you ask the question to the panel of how do you confront these things, it could be very difficult because obviously in front of a judge that I'm going to see all the time, I'm not going to call him out, right?
Yeah.
But they do have surveys, right? And you write in and you tell the court what happened. But what I found during that role as insurance defense attorney was to just be excellent, because then they saw me all the time. They saw me do well. And from that, they just get more comfortable with seeing us in those roles as young women.
Thank you for sharing.
Very good.
And a unique experience because it is the judge.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not really at liberty to speak up in that moment. Right.
Thank you. It must be like lawyer time because all of the lawyers are speaking.
Glad to see them.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Coleman. I'm an associate at the firm of Brock Eichler, and I practice healthcare law. I wanted to mention a situation that happened to me and pose a question. I'm sorry? Okay. Is this better? Okay. I wanted to mention a situation that happened and then also ask a question as a follow-up. So I had, it was a couple of years back. At that time, I was at the Attorney General's office and I was giving legal counsel to professional licensing boards. So I had a board meeting and counseling that board meeting. And there was a board member who commented on my hair, just said, "Oh, your hair looks nice," right? And then a gentleman, and then he got this very nervous, scared look on his face. And he says to me, "I'm sorry, did I offend you? Did I say something wrong? I know we're in this time of timeout and Me Too. And I didn't want to say anything wrong." And I said to him, it's completely fine. you said my hair looks nice, thank you. Like, it's nothing. So I say that situation to say, how do you combat when someone is super hyper, like sensitive, if you will, of the environment that we're in, and being able to, I mean, in that moment, I appreciate that this person, this colleague or client was very conscious, right? Even woke maybe to some extent, but I think that somewhat it created like an awkward situation. How do you combat that as well when you're in a situation where, you know, a colleague seems to understand sort of the issues that are going on, but you also foster a really collaborative, you know, client, attorney-client relationship moving forward in a way that is going to be productive?
I pretty much say thank you for the compliment. You know, so it puts them a little at ease. I mean, most of the time we're working with the same 5 or 6 of us anyway. And it would be more like someone from a family that I'm serving and we're large group now. That's when people come up and would say something and they might be more conscious of it. But that's not someone I have a relationship with. I mean, I only know them for 3 or 4 days and then they move on. So I say thank you for the compliment and I smile and that's it. So they feel comfortable, not like that look like, you know, like, yeah. It's usually enough for me, but I'm in a different environment than most of you, you know.
Well, thank you all for your questions today. Thank you to our panelists, Jeana Piscatelli, OceanFirst Bank, Maisha Moore, Casino Reinvestment Development Authority, and Geri Oliverie, Oliverie Funeral Homes. And thank you for attending this panel. I'm Jacyln Cooper with CGI, and I look forward to networking with you throughout the rest of the day and seeing you at the event this evening. Have a great afternoon.
Oh, thank you.